Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Musa Sheikh, and I'm live from London and with a new show called Futuristic Trade and Economic Show. I will give you a format of this show. This show is going to discuss the future of the world in terms of economic prosperity and in terms of where the world is leading ahead and what is good and what is bad and how the bad can be converted into good and how can we spread the positivity in the economic world and where we can capitalize the positivity into the business dynamics and indicators. So this show is based on a concept that what's going on in terms of economy. So we need to talk about the cost of living crisis, which the whole world is passing through. We have to see the post dynamics of COVID, and we have to see what is the impact on inflation, what is the impact on the interest rate, and is employment is increasing, employment across the globe. We'll see all the major countries like England. We will see what's going on in Australia. We'll see how the things are in Europe, and we'll see how things are in United States of America. We will definitely look into the effects of cost of production. We'll see the resources of raw materials, where they are, who's consuming, and what is the next 6 months looks like. Some people predicting that the world is going into recession. Some people are saying no, this is industry specific recession. So recession in which way? We'll see what going in the financial markets. So we'll see what equities are doing, what's the alternative investments markets, and we'll see the dynamics of the bond market, what the gilt is doing, what the treasury is doing, what the fiscal forces are doing, and how the monetary policy is playing in the role in terms of the global economy. So today, in our program, we invited one of the top economists in Australia who's going to join us live from Sydney. And today, our focus on all these topics: interest rate, cost of living, energy, inflation, wage rate, monetary indicators, fiscal indicators, all we will focus on Australia. This will enlighten us that how Australia is looking and preparing themselves for the next coming recession times. So please welcome Imran Ashraf live from Sydney.
Thank you, Musa. Thank you so much, and good morning to all of the listeners. It's a beautiful Sunday morning in Sydney, and thank you for the warm introduction. Yes, Musa, I have actually seen and few quite unusual events in the past few years on the horizon of economic outlook in Australia. First of all, everybody these days is talking about the cost of living pressure, inflation. Everything is going expensive. I think we have seen the pandemic from the late in 2019 and then 2020, and then a few hiccups and waves of the pandemic last year and since in the beginning of this year. This is once in a century time event, and it has a totally different parameters in terms of its effects on the economic activities in all the developed economies in the world, and Australia is no doubt one of the part of it. And similarly, at the same time, the different events which has generated the balloon of inflation which we were witnessing before the pandemic, that inflation band in Australia was consistently sitting within the band limit of 2 to 3%, and it was there from last 8 9 years. After the GFC or global financial crisis back in 2008, we haven't seen any tightening of the monetary policy in Australia. And that was one of the reasons that the Reserve Bank of Australia has continuously and in different cities or in different steps have softened the monetary policy by decreasing the cash reserve rate, and it has actually bring the cash reserve rate to 0.1%, which is 10 basis point only. And we have seen in states sitting at zero, and in UK significantly lower. Mm, and suddenly the pandemic hit the world economies and the in the world, and economies react differently, and they went into the expansionary mode of fiscal policy, where all different governments, all different financial bodies decided to encourage people to spend more money. Just spend so that the economic activity won't affect. And during that pandemic, the whole culture and whole stigma was given to increase spending by reducing the taxation measures, or government in most of the cases in most developed economies, and especially in Australia, was giving the support payments, and giving the different fiscal expansionary benefit to the organization, so that the level of confidence, consumer confidence growth, won't get affected. On the other hand, we have also seen after the pandemic, or since the stabilizing of this COVID-19 pandemic wave, there is a geopolitical tension or segments in the different parts of the world. And I think that is also one of the main reason when we talk about post-pandemic era of world economies, that has a significant impact on the oil prices, on the wheat commodity prices, and on the other freight industry and export industries of different part of the world economies. That has also significantly generated the pressure on the cost of living and all these areas. Now, when we see the inflation in Australia at the moment, Musa, it's as per the October month of 2022, the report is indicating it's sitting at 7.3 percentage. When we see the inflation figure of United States, we can witness that it is sitting at 7.8 percentage. However, back in October report, it was at 8.2 percentage. Now, yes, there are three major reasons for inflation. Like I said in my previous version, demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and the one very important factor is the inflation expectations. In my understanding, demand pull inflation definitely came here because the development on the demand side of the economy is still strong, and in that event where we have seen in pandemic, due to the scarcity or shortage of the workforce or restriction on different areas, has significantly created pressure on the workforce, and demand side of the economy was still the same, and that has created pressure on the demand pool. And when we talk about the geopolitical tension, a common example, we have seen the oil prices in the world has gone up significantly. It has changed the whole scenario and whole horizon of the energy sector in the world. In Europe, if we see that there is a significant pressure on the energy prices. In Australia, if we can see there is a significant prices on the oil prices. And due to the significant pressure on the oil prices, it has generated the cost push inflation. Obviously, when we are looking to spend more money for just an example for transportation of the goods from their production facilities, factories, or industries to the markets, that has a significant impact on the price of these products and finished commodities. And who will bear the pressure? The end consumer. The end consumer who is going to buy that product, they have to bear the brunt of that increased prices. And on the other hand, in that once in a century time event, when the pandemic hit, I think, in my analysis, inflation expectations has changed. How people have reacted mentally and psychologically on different things, where they can expect that they think the price of certain product might go up into the future, and or in the coming future, and based on that forecast or expectation, they uh, want to acquire that thing or at that commodity, and that will create unnecessary aggregate pressure on the demand side of that products. So that inflation expectations also played a significant role, especially during the pandemic period, when most of the labor force in these advanced economies, and especially in Australia, I can witness and give you an example. People came to the new way of life, which is called hybrid working, work from home, and they have excessive time, they have some extra time, they have some extra funds which they have saved by not commuting on the everyday commute to the office. Due to the extra availability of those funds and all these things and extra timings, um, these inflation expectation sector has gone up, and that has led to a significant pressure into the inflation balloon. And now we can witness that currently the consumer price index, which is monitored by the Reserve Bank of Australia, is sitting at one of the highest level at the moment, and it is around 6.9 percentage. And if you look toward the inflation figure in Australia, that is sitting around 7.3 percentage. However, Reserve Bank, from the last 6 months, Reserve Bank of Australia, which is also called RBA, has significantly tightened the monetary policy by continuously increasing the cash reserve rate. In the initial board meetings, they have increased the cash reserve rate 50 basis point in pretty much every monthly board meeting. And after that, from the last 2 months, they are giving an increase of 25 basis point. Now, today we are sitting at 2.85% cash reserve rate, which was 0.1 percentage. So that was only 10 basis point before or in the beginning of this year. Now it is 285 basis point, and that is a significant difference. Now, going further, it will also have a significant impact on the people's disposable income, because it will also shows how people will react to those changes, how this tightening of the monetary policy will affect the people's pocket. So in saying inflation is there, it is definitely creating some problems. And moving forward, Reserve Bank of Australia and Treasury, they are significantly taking steps to control this balloon, or the big elephant of inflation within its target band of 2 to 3%, so that it won't affect, or it won't damage or give harm to the economy if it continues to grow by this level. Yes, Musa, to your next question.
That's quite insightful how Aussies are looking to the economy and how they are controlling this is really impressive. And if we see the Britain is almost doing the same. So they are trying to look into monetary policy, looking around how to handle the energy crisis and how to give the relief to the general citizen. That's the most important of all, because that's the key of every governance, that how you make the life of a normal citizen in a way that they feel that they are happy. Now, moving forward, so how you think that what are the different ways to avoid the recession that is coming towards the global economies, and what will be your suggestions in order to handle these kind of issues?
Thank you, Musa. A very interesting question. Um, Whenever we have witnessed the tightening of the monetary policies around the world, where all the reserve banks or central banks decided to increase the interest rates in order to curtail the problem of inflation, there is always a chances of recession because by increasing the interest rates or the cash reserve rates have a significant impact on the people's disposable income. When people have less disposable incomes, or every household has less availability of extra funds toward the disposable means of consumptions, that will affect the consumer sentiment. Now, the real challenges here for the Australian economy and for the Reserve Bank of Australia is when they are tightening the monetary policy or when they are increasing the cash reserve rate so aggressively because they want to bring the inflation band within their targeted limit of 2 to 3 percentage, they also need to be very mindful that a rapid increase of the interest rate or cash reserve rate won't negatively harm the consumer sentiment. If it harms the consumer sentiment, what will happen? Then the growth started to squeeze, people's sentiment will started to decrease, consumer confidence will be shaken, and economy will start contracting. We can understand that the economy at this point and stage, because of the very significant and high inflation, is very heated or extra heated. We want to cool down that economic position or cool down that economy at the moment by tightening the monetary policy so that people won't have easy or cheap availability or accessibility to the liquidity. But what we also need to be mindful here that this event in the world is quite significantly different. In my analysis, it is because of the pandemic, which is once in a century. And we have at least, if we go through the history, this is pretty much after 1 century. And then we have a geopolitical tension which is shifting of powers. The two major economic or trade blocks in the world. One is towards American and European side, and the other is China and all these sides. Obviously, they have different political motives, and I don't want to go into these sector, and that's not my expertise in that sector. In my understanding, from the economic activity side, that has created a totally different dimension in supply of products. In the demand is still sitting pretty much at the same level, but the supply segment of the product has changed significantly. So, going further, uh, the Reserve Bank of Australia and the Treasury are taking very decisive and very strong actions where I come to your point, they at the same time they are giving subsidies. They are helping out the most needy and most vulnerable segment of the society through income support and through subsidies and through family payments, so that they can cope the rising price of the energy, electricity, gas, food in the supermarkets, increased price of the petrol at the buzzer, and at the same time, they are trying to tightening the monetary policy by increasing the cash reserve rate, so that people won't have cheap and easy accessibility to the funds. They will reduce the demand side of the inflation. So when there is a less demand for the product, it won't give unnecessary evident to the industrial sector or to the manufacturer or to the importer or to the entrepreneur, small medium enterprises, to increase their prices of the product in the market without any logical reason. However, one significant element here is, Musa, which is quite different from, which is not working along this path, is the real wage growth. We have seen some nominal wage growth. Yes, wages has been going up. There is a scarcity of the workforce, but in real sense, the wages hasn't gone up, because when we compare that increase in the wages on the nominal side towards the CPI, Consumer Price Index, or inflation, we cannot see a big difference. I think in some cases people are worse off, and in some cases people are struggling to be on the same level, because CPI and the inflation has gone up too much. So that is one of the factors, that the real wage growth is not happening. People are unfortunately not feeling any benefit out of this activity, and due to this thing, um, in my understanding, I probably would say there is not quite significant chances of recession in coming future in Australia. Australian economy is on quite strong footings. Yes, we can see some correction in our property and real estate market because of the tightening of the monetary policy. Yes, we can see some correction in terms of the stock and bonds market because of the rising inflation. We can see the bonds and equities will lose their worth because newer bonds and equities will offer more interest rates and all these things. However, at the same time, what is important to understand, that still there is a strong employment rate. The unemployment figures in Australia is historically low, and all these events warrants me that the lack of availability of the labor, unemployment rate is very low, and uh, the availability of the workers. These all areas, when we mitigate those factors, it does not warrant a significant challenge or a severe warning for the recession in the coming time. Yes, Musa.
That's really interesting and very insightful. I always believe that the Australia and Britain, they are twins economy. They always see the same circumstances whenever it goes. And top of it, I always have a thought on how to handle the general citizen life in a better way. So assume that we have a consumer price index, which you just highlighted, and we say that we figure out that there are around 150 items in this basket, which every person is consuming a day. For example, when we wake up, we need a bread, we need egg, we need cucumber, we need parsley, we need tomatoes, we need potatoes, So all these, if we try to figure out that they should come out of the business and it becomes in a supply which has a pure competition where things are it's the inflation effect with the proper planning where we have agriculture reforms where we can uh, put out these things from a trade mechanism and we put them into essentials and we don't play with the prices of these things. We manage the storage, we manage the shortages. So the consumer who is suffering from this business community artificial storages which keep the prices high and slow, that can be managed with a proper fiscal management. I believe not only in Britain but from all over the world we can do the same. And secondly, every person wants to live in a home. and the mortgage investors who artificially coming from the other countries, bringing a lot of cash flow, which causes the increase, an artificial increase in the prices, also cause a general citizen a problem in terms of housing. So it's a time where we economists has to sit together, policymakers. We have to say, look, enough is enough. We should sit together, figure out what are the 200 items in a consumer basket, which is no more a business, it's a service. And every country should work on making sure that the enough supply is available and no one is playing around for the hoarding or the shortage. What are your intakes on this concept that we have already so working effectively in some countries?
Thank you, Musa. This is once again a very core and very common question for everyday normal citizen in these countries. I can give you an example of Australia. We have seen some flooding events in New South Wales and in Queensland and even in Victoria, the state of the Melbourne. Due to those flooding events, prices of certain perishable commodities in vegetable and fruit market has gone up, and that has significantly bring pressure on the cost of living and everyday household budgets. But those were the seasonal events that happened due to the natural disasters. Yes, now the government and the concerned bodies have realized that what was missing, why we have the second or third consecutive years of flooding, because might be we haven't done enough to secure or procure extra water. Now they are working toward that side so that they can, in some cases, they are looking to increase or raise the walls of the dams, especially in Sydney. We can witness they are looking to raise the wall of the biggest dam of Sydney, which is the Warragamba Dam. And similarly, consensus has been developed to construct new dams in Queensland as well as in Victoria, so that in future they can not only save water, but they can also save those flood prone areas from floods. And when they would be successfully able to save those flood prone areas from flood or extra monsoon flooding, the commodities of perishable vegetables and fruits won't get affected. And in the end of the day, end consumer in the supermarket or household won't get affected by the unnecessary increase in the prices. Now, coming toward the other end, yes, like you said, mortgage and household and housing is one of the important thing, and every developed economy or developed society did their best efforts to provide the shelter to its citizens. I think that is going to be a little bit challenging time for the next 2 or 3 months due to the tightening of the monetary policy around the world, like we have witnessed in United States. Interest rates or monetary policy is rising quite aggressively. And similarly, I can give you an example of Australia. And like I said in my previous answer of the question, that Reserve Bank of Australia is significantly tightening the monetary policy just to make sure to control the inflation within its targeted band of 2 to 3%. However, at the same time, this tightening of the monetary policy will have a positive impact on the real estate or housing market in terms of a correctional event is happening. But in saying, I think it's a very bigger point when we talk about Australia, because historically we are the nation of migrants, and we have a strong immigration rate from around the world, and that also have a significant impact on the availability of housing and pressure on housing in Australia as well. And when we look toward the immigration side of Australia. Australia has, fortunately, I would say, one of the only advanced or developed economies in the world. Those who are intaking the always intaking the migration from the much wealthier nations, Asia, East Asia, and all these, compared to America or UK, those who are surrounded by the lesser per capita economies in their neighborings. So that has totally a different dynamics. I think we can run a separate program on this one. However, certainly in Australia, Reserve Bank of Australia, Treasury, and all the concerned departments in each and every individual states under the autonomous right and the full autonomy, they are working at their best to provide these basic necessities of life as a concept of service and facility to which citizens, and at the quite moderate availability of these resources to citizens within their means, so that everybody can enjoy those availability of products or commodities within their means of income and within their means of living. Yes, Musa.
That's amazing. Imran, you have enlightened a lot of things about Australia, and the discussion is going very interesting. But we are unfortunately run out of time. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And in our next show, we'll talk more about the Australian economy. We'll see how the Aussies are working toward making their country better and great. And our audience is always excited to learn and share and exchange their thoughts. Well, thank you again, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Musa, and thank you to all the viewers.
Yes, ladies